Wanted to send you my appreciation for being here, so thank you. Okay. For each case, there will be a public hearing. We ask that the applicant keep their presentation to under 10 minutes. They may reserve 2 minutes as a rebuttal to public comment. We ask that the public keep their comments to 2 minutes unless they have previously requested in writing for 5 minutes as a representative of a group or organization. Pursuant to the provision of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that a final hearing before this commission is appealable to the Chancery Court of Davidson County or the Circuit Court of Davidson County, this statutory writ of certiorari. You are advised to seek your own independent legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements are met. You should also seek independent legal advice regarding the applicability of the writ of certiorari to the specific decision of the Historic Zoning Commission. Items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. Robin, do we have any changes to the agenda for the day?
We do. 1620 Russell Street is removed from consent, and so will be at the end of the agenda. And 2020 10th Avenue South is asked to defer until next month.
Okay, with those changes, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there second? All those in favor? Okay, no opposition, so that passes. Are there any council members today? All right, none. And we will go for approval of the minutes of July 18, 2018. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There is a motion.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All approved. It is your turn, Mr. Paul.
Good afternoon. This month's consent agenda includes 748 Roycroft Place, new construction addition, 1725 Linden Avenue, new construction addition, 1405 Dallas Avenue, new construction addition, 1115 Greenwood Avenue, new construction outbuilding and setback determination, 1014 Petway Avenue, new construction addition and partial demolition, 2602 Essex Place, new construction addition, 1714 Fifth Avenue North, new construction addition and outbuilding and setback determination, 4407 Park Avenue, new construction addition, 4411 Park Avenue, new construction addition, 2302 Belmont Boulevard, new construction addition and outbuilding, 1620 Russell has been removed, and concludes with 313 Wilson Boulevard, new construction of an addition with a setback determination. Staff has reviewed these cases, determined that they meet the respective design guidelines, and recommends approval of the items on the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Are there any questions? Okay, is there a motion?
I move for approval.
There is a motion.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. So we now go to
Before we move on, should we check with the public to see if any other items should be removed from consent?
Okay. Are there any items on the agenda that you in the public would like to have comment? Okay, thank you. We close public comment on that. 2300 10th Avenue North, 10th Avenue South.
You have public comment in your staff recommendation for this project, and additional comment was sent to you this morning after the staff report was published. Councilman Sledge also asked me to let you know that he's not in favor of demolition, but I don't believe he's going to be able to join us today. He's going to try. This is a case to demolish a historic building based on economic hardship. Economic hardship is not about financial hardship of the owner, but the economic viability of the building. In this case, the engineer's report provided by the applicant states that the building is in good condition and is stable. He further states that when viewed as a whole, there is opportunity to both improve the quality of the existing structure while retaining as much of the existing structure as possible to satisfy the existing neighborhood conservation zoning overlay. Since the engineer did not find that the building is inhabitable or dangerous, and he did find that any repairs desired could be done in a manner that meets the guidelines, there is no hardship. The applicant also provided several estimates for repair and new construction as well as value. In this case, since rehab, again, isn't even necessary to make the building habitable or usable, those numbers don't have much meaning in an economic hardship case. However, staff did review the estimates provided anyway, and no matter how you run the numbers, the applicant can make a profit off the building. It is staff's understanding that the applicant wishes to demolish the building in order to construct 2 homes. However, according to the codes director, 2 homes would not be allowed on this substandard lot if the building is demolished. The owner currently has the ability for 2 units as a non-conforming use, but if the building is demolished, that use of 2 different units is lost. But that has nothing to do with the overlay, has nothing to do with your review. That is from the codes department. Staff recommends disapproval of the application for full demolition, finding that it does not meet Section 3B2C for economic hardship. And then, of course, we also recommend that the owner continue to work with us on the design of an addition or a dadu if they want to move that second unit out of the basement somewhere else in the house. Any questions for me?
Okay, thank you, Robin. Not at this time.
One quick thing here is, thank you. Here's some photographs of the interior. There's a lot more in your packet. And if you'll go to the next one, the applicant has a presentation for you as well. Thanks.
I have glaucoma, so I need to use the computer. Is it okay?
Please give us your name and address as well. Thank you.
Sorry for my nerves. My name is it going to start when I start talking? Hold on.
Would you mind putting the microphone closer to you?
Okay.
Thank you.
So my name is Sonny Smith. I'm the current family owner of the property. I'm indigenous to the area. My grandparents bought the house in 1964, William and Janie Smith. The plan was to build, my plan is to build 2 homes, one for the family and one to sell. I was there when it was called the middle class. I was there when they called it the hood. I was there when it was drug infested, and I'm there now that they call it 12 South. March 2015, my daughter and I decided that we would improve the property, and she would assist me as I prepare for retirement and my eyesight begins to fail. I have glaucoma, which is considered under the Disability Act. I was advised by Councilperson Sandra Moore at the time to survey the neighbors. I did that. They agreed, all but 2. 30 of them agreed, all but 2. My timeline.
Yes, this message is for Sonny Smith. This is Melissa Sajid with Metro Planning, just calling you back about the property at 2300 10th Avenue South. So this was discussed at our staff meeting yesterday, and the feedback is that it's not something that planning would likely support since there's no alley access. However, you can continue to work with the council member. If she's in support, it's possible it could happen even if the planning department doesn't.
I played that because on the same deed that the staff said that I did not make a payment of, that the payment of $10 was left off, on that same deed, quitclaim deed, there's a payment, there's an alley that's mentioned in the back of the property. this is the chapter that I call Miscommunication and Injustice. I met with Kerry Logan and Brandon Barnett, October 2015. I emailed Councilman Sledge, October the 30th, 2015. He emailed me back December the 7th, stating that he does not do spot zoning unless it's multiple properties or affordable housing. On October 22nd, Councilman Sledge supported project number 2015 SP 096001, a request to rezone a 1- and 2-family residence house to a SPR, a 29-unit resident on the same 6,000 square foot lot, smaller than my lot. On Thursday, October the 12th, 2015, he supported a single property project number 2015, project number 2014S097001 on 9th Avenue South, 500 square feet, and create two lots. On November the 3rd, I met with Kerry Logan and Ms. Ziegler. I'm sorry. On November the 3rd, Kerry Logan emailed Ms. Ziegler and I to say that I could not have a building permit regardless if there's an alley in the back of the yard or not. The new issue was that my lot was too small and that I could not demolish because of the proposed overlay. Ms. Ziegler emailed me on November the 4th to confirm that I could not demolish the house because of the proposed overlay. November the 6th, 2015, Metro issued a demolition permit for 921 Walkirch, 3 doors down from me. On 12/5/15, Mr. Barnett, senior planning manager, offered me a dadu, which I agreed to, but I was refused a building permit. 12/22/2015, Mr. Barnett emailed Ms. Ziegler to inform her of my plan to build a dadu. Year 2, miscommunication and injustice continued. June 16, a drawing was submitted to Ms. Barlock, at the Historic Commission, which was approved. The builder was told that he could not remove the roof, although the drawing was approved, and my non-conforming duplex letter said that I could. March 2007, my lawyer, Chris Fowler, contacted Ms. Ziegler. He received an email from Ms. Ziegler who agreed that I could build a duplex, and that I should submit an architectural plan. She also stated that my initial drawing, which was approved by Ms. Blaylock, looked like a house behind a house and didn't meet the guidelines. Around the end of May 2017, I met an architect, Mitch Barnett, in the 12th South Avenue, in the 12th South area. He was prepared to give me a plan, but he wanted $27,000. I was prepared to pay it, but I wanted to ensure that the Historic Commission was on board. I've always tried to do the right thing. Once again, miscommunication and injustice. I was denied and told to apply for economic hardship, so I'm doing it based on what they've told me to do. So if it's not filled out correct, it's because I'm not a developer. I'm just a simple homeowner. The human factor. While I received an official document of the staff recommendation on official letterhead, it still had Megan Berry's name on it as mayor. I'm sure it was an oversight, just like the $10 that I omitted from my application. The issue of self-imposed destruction and limited use of property. I submit that the family has lived for 54 years since 1964 without full use of the property because the city improperly took 10 feet of the land for its use, and we continue to pay taxes for 54 years. So for the staff to recommend we not have full use of the property, we say no. We want full use. We've done our deed to the community. The family home is a generational legacy and an investment, not a cash cow, which we have cared for 54 years. So to assume that I knowingly or I had knowledge that paint or brick would cause damage, again, I say no. 2007. This is what the house looked like.
Can you go back to that as well?
Folks, 2007,
It really is. It's for the record.
2009. This is what 10th Avenue looked like, 2007, 2009. This is what it looks like now. This is the back of the house. Next. This is the area view. Next. This is what 10th Avenue looks like now. Next. This is where the water comes in. The video won't play, but water comes in the basement. Not all the time, but it does. Next. Another view where the water is being held in because of that retainer wall. Next. This is the back side of the side of the house where the drawing is. It's because that wall is connected to all 8 houses that are on that block, and it also is connected to the basement. So that's where the water is coming in there. Please. My neighbors who live on the upper level, they don't have the water problem. I do. Skip that, please. This is the drawing. This is the drawing that was submitted earlier. Next, please. Next, please. When they told me I couldn't take my roof off, this is one that they had in the neighborhood. They allowed them to take their roof off and told me that they were in serious violation. Next, please. This house at 921, at 909 Walkirch is also painted. This is the project that they have just recently approved. I hope they told that owner, do not paint the brick. Next, please. This is my official letter from for my eye doctor that says I have glaucoma. Next, please. This is something that I would love to put up, the 2 of those. I'm done.
Ms. Smith, are you good?
Faint. I don't know.
Good. Well, thank you for your presentation. We appreciate it.
Could you just in one word say what the recording was again?
It was Melissa Sargent leaving a message in March 2015 because I went there. Oh, you said one more? I went there to say, what do I do to build 2?
Okay.
That's when I worked for the Metro Planning Department.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So the thing was that I didn't have an alley, although that I
Okay.
did. Go sit down. Go sit down.
So, Ms. Smith, just to be really clear, your presentation is for us, it's of course reviewing that you would like to have this house demolished and a new 2 duplexes built.
Yes, for my glaucoma, number 1, what it doesn't show you is that the house is sinking in this way, and my depth is off, so the floors are doing this. So I'm constantly running in the walls because of the small, the steps, the elevation is too high. So for more movement and to keep my daughter there who can take me around when my eyesight is totally gone.
Just so you know, you have 57 seconds to reserve for
Yeah.
rebuttal after public comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? Thank you.
Sorry.
So we will open public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this project? Please come forward, say your name and address.
Hello, I'm Kendra Thompson. My address is 2300 10th Avenue South, 37204, and thank you, commissioners, for having us here. Also, thank you, Metro Historic. This has been a long process with a lot of ambiguity in that process. A lot of the reasons that I have observed for her no's, there have not been any concrete policies for the no other than there's no alley, which there is an alley behind the house. I don't think the city recognizes it as an alley, but it's physically there. Just other reasons for no when there are multiple houses on 10th Avenue as well as Walkirk in particular that have been modified, demolished, just as we're seeking within the conservation overlay. For example, 910, they just had a renovation. Now I'm not a planner, so I don't know the the provisions that it was under, however it occurred. From personal experience, I have the best interest in the neighborhood. As my mother stated, our family has been there for over 50 years. We dine at the local areas, so my son goes to school within the geographic priority zone, so we're very interested in the community and its growth and development, and we want to be a part of that growth and development. We want to evolve as well. My mother has severe glaucoma. The house needs to be demolished. We need a new home. We need to sustain. We need the home demolished. Other than that, I just hope that everything has been looked over properly, because there are some questions within the procedure that I've noticed over time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else?
Greetings. I'll keep my comments short. My name is Dr. Sekou Franklin, and I work at MTSU in the political science department. I don't claim to be an expert on planning, although I do teach municipal government, but I want to speak on behalf of Ms. Sonia and just make the argument that it's basically not fair. She started the process at the advice of a previous councilperson before Councilman Sledge got to office. When Councilman Sledge, I believe, made his first comments on it, or at least initial comments on it, he was only in office for a couple of months. In addition, there is another property nearby, I believe at 910, that has also been able to go through a similar set of experiences that she's asking for. And so I think, what I want to argue on her behalf is that she's just asking for fairness in the process. She's already jump-started the process several years ago at the advice of another council person. I do think it's important to mention that that she's been in the area longer than most of the residents have been in the area, pre-gentrification, if that makes any sense. And I do want to make the argument that I think the commission should look at is that, particularly for African Americans, this is a wealth building opportunity without actually leaving the community, while staying in the community, building a diverse multi-class community. And all she's asking for is fairness in the process, the ability to demolish her home, build new construction, and also to stay there. And I think because she jump-started the process long ago at the advice of Metro government officials, then she should be able to continue that process.
Thank you. Anyone else, please?
Yes, my name is Barbara Carruthers, and I am a neighbor to Ms. Smith, and I've been a neighbor.
Please give
to
us
her.
your address. Please give us your address. It's
My
for the
address
record.
was 912 Walkirch Avenue.
Thank you.
And I've known her all my life. She's just a few years younger than me, but I know what she has gone through. Right now, she's dealing with the mildew, the moisture that has accumulated from this water problem, and it has always affected their health. And that's what I know. And she does have an alley in the back of her yard, as she stated. And I think that she's really done a great job in trying to get a fair deal out of this, what she's trying to endure. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before we close public hearing?
I don't have very much to say. I'm George Thompson. I'm an attorney licensed to practice law here in the state of Tennessee.
Address, please.
My address is 1326 Rosa L. Parks Boulevard. That is the address of my office. My home address is 933 34th Avenue North. I'm here to follow behind the doctor that just appeared before you. I don't have very much to say except initially Ms. Smith came to me years ago and had been to zoning and was approved by Bill Hubbard, went to the Historical Commission, and there was no overlay at the time, but oh, we are pending, we are working on that. So she initially started years ago with her effort. And what I'm hearing is that there's others who have come behind her who have sought the same thing she has sought earlier than they, but yet has been denied. And yes, we would look at that and maybe suggest that there may be disparate treatment. And that's what she's asking. I've been involved with her all along. It is not something that needs to be a big community dispute. It shouldn't be. And we ask you to study it, to look at it, to acknowledge the history that she has already given you and what is happening in that area, and correct the problem without the necessity of a lot of problems otherwise. The lady has put really her heart and soul into seeking to accomplish what she's asking you to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, my name
Public
is
comment, please just remember you have 2 minutes, so please watch your.
Okay. My name is Newton Holliday. I'm an attorney as well. My office address is 1503 Church Street, Suite 1, Nashville, Tennessee. My address is 2533 Shreve Lane in Nashville, Tennessee. I, as well as work with Ms. Smith to try to get this problem resolved long before this community started any building. And what I've seen over that course of time is her inability to exercise her rights as a property owner. When a person goes to law school, the first thing they learn is about property rights and fee simple absolute. And that absolute means you can absolutely do what you want to do with your property. And this commission has denied this woman from being able to do what she absolutely wants to do with her property, just like every other denizen of this county has done with their property. Either sold it or built on it, and everybody should have to have the same opportunity. I agree with what Attorney Thompson said, that there's been some disparity in the treatment of people that's trying to rebuild their house or tear it down or whatever they want to do with it. If they just want to have a vacant lot, you have that right to do that. And that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi. Hello, everyone. I got just 2 minutes.
Name and address, sir.
Reverend Enoch Fuzz, 903 33rd Avenue North, Nashville, Tennessee. I received a call about this issue, specifically from Ms. Smith, many months ago, and it has really kind of like consumed a lot of my effort. I've looked into lots of things, talked to lots of so-called experts, even up to Washington, D.C., Supreme Court, civil rights violations. You learn a lot about gentrification, which I'm not opposed to or against or anything like that. I'm just not making an opinion. Only thing I'm opposed to is, today, is that this lady can't do what she wants to do on property that she owns. And it made me research it and find out that, whoa, civil rights violations. Then I hear people say, liberal white people. I don't know what that means. I'm just saying, quote, all right, that it's a technique that's generally used, that they move into the community, talk real nice. I'm not saying this is true. I'm just saying this is just what's put on the table. You hear me? All right? And then next thing you know, they're talking about, we don't want any more houses out here. Whew, I know that neighborhood. Toured that neighborhood with my deceased wife, who was an appraiser, who talked about what would happen, and it did happen. People should have a right We can't just blanketly take away folks' property rights and then give some people, and I've seen those. And I don't want this to go to the Supreme Court or for folks to be protesting about it. I want people to be treated right. I've seen developers who were treated differently from her. Then I went to talk to your city council people out there. And when I went in with her, they said, I got 3 more minutes. They said, okay, Reverend Fuzz, we want to help you.
We really appreciate it, but your time is over.
What kind of time? You should have told me that before I got up here and started talking, girl.
I did, sir. I said 2 minutes public
Yeah,
comment.
but I didn't see that little timekeeper over there.
Sure. Thank you very much.
All right, well, y'all do the right thing here. That's what I come to tell you. Make sure you do the right thing.
Thank you. Anyone else, please?
Hello. My name is Yvette Jones, 302 Deer Point Drive, Hendersonville, Tennessee, 37075. I am the legal secretary for Attorney George Thompson that was up here a moment ago. I've been knowing Sonia Smith since 1993. I've been at her house numerous times. I can't even go to her house now because of the condition of the mold and the mildew. I'm allergic to it, so it makes me sick. Whenever I leave her house, I always have to go home and take medication. I know how hard and how many years she has worked drastically hard to accomplish her dream and her goal. She grew up in this house. This is vitally important to her and her daughter and her grandson, the one that will be owning some of this property at some point in life if she goes on to glory before one of them. So I know how important this task is for her. So I'm asking you all to please give this young lady what she wants because it has taken its toll on her body. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is William Gaffney, 210 Middleton Street, Nashville, Tennessee. I am new to Nashville, Tennessee, 5 years. I moved here, we moved to Franklin because we wanted our kids to be in the best school district in a growing city. I've known Ms. Smith now for 2.5 years. I personally been looking to build on the property that Ms. Smith owns. Every home around her has been changed. It's been beautified. I've been asked to bring in engineers and architects to look at her property. I've seen the reports that she has given me, my construction background from the University of Tuskegee University, retaining walls, structural, but the homes around, they've all been changed. Ms. Smith owns her home. If it's a beautification question, if it's a beautification issue, if it's a structural issue, if it's a keep the neighborhood intact issue, please tell Ms. Smith what she needs to do. From the documents that she has shown me over and over again, she has met every requirement and criteria that the city has asked her to meet, and still she's been denied. She owns the home. I'm a professional, so I'm taking the emotion out of this conversation. I'm just telling you facts. This is a resident of Nashville who wants to stay where she has lived, where her family has lived, and she'll do what she needs to do to make that home appeasing to the neighborhood. The homes around her house have been changed. I do not understand why she cannot make the changes. The retaining wall is why she asked me to be here. The retaining wall that stretches from her residence to 5 houses down. That retaining wall has been destroyed for other residents to make their homes. It's a concrete retaining wall, so it still retains its structure, but it has been weakened. And upon the documents that Ms. Smith has of the structural damage and the condition of her home, she deserves to have her home demolished and build what she wants to build. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Anya George, and I reside at 210 Middleton Street, 37210. I have known Sonia for about 5 years, and for those 5 years, she has had plans for her home. She's gone through many visits to speak with many different people, has sunk in a significant amount of money over that time, and what is inhibiting her is really quite incomprehensible for me. We have talked about it multiple times over the years. And one of the reasons that we talk about it is because I am the party who would be purchasing what she would like to develop on part of her property. In seeing what has happened, what continues to happen in the 12 South area, I don't understand, and if there's someone who could make me understand why it exempts Sonia from being able to benefit, from being able to build on her property the way others have in this area or in that area, I would really appreciate that explanation, and I know she would too. It is not comprehensible as to why she is not able to go forward and develop her property that has been in her family. She has gone forward and done every single request, and once those requests have been complete, she is told that she has to do something else. Every time she talks to me, there is something else that she has been asked to do. I believe she is being injusticed so much, I actually canceled some meetings so I could be here today. Amen. It is unfathomable to me that we have to sit here and have this process where we are selling the fact that this woman owns this property and she has the right to develop it. Again, please support Sonia Smith in this endeavor. I will take every course of action that I can to support her.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else?
Hello, my name is Jeff Meltison. I live at 2026 10th Avenue South. And basically every time there's a request for a demolition within the conservation overlay, I hope to be here. We don't want historic homes demolished in the neighborhood. This is not, for me, specific to the situation of this property. As I mentioned, I'll be here every time I can to speak against the demolition of historic homes. As a community, we all went around door to door, met with everybody, and worked tireless hours to explain the conservation overlay and generated a lot of community support, and we're thrilled when that overlay went into place to protect historic homes from being demolished. I fear that exceptions and exemptions to the overlay set a dangerous precedent for other developers wanting to come along and chip away at the overlay. So I urge you not to allow any demolition of historic homes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Sarah Wells. I live at 908 Bradford Avenue in Nashville. I don't know Sonia, and I understand that every property owner wants to do what he or she thinks is best for them. I was a block captain for the overlay that was put into place in Waverly Belmont, and just like Jeff said, I want to reiterate that I'm afraid that setting a precedent where the overlay isn't actually what it was intended to do, if we can slowly piecemeal take away historic homes within that overlay, that I fear what did we do, and why did we spend so many hours trying to institute a tool that will help us to preserve the historic homes, maintain the historic homes, and allow us to remain stewards to the historic homes that we all, some, love and try to maintain. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Carol Ashworth, 919 Carruthers. Ms. Smith is my neighbor, and I hope that there'll be a way that she can work with what she has to improve the value of her property, and to realize that there is a lot of inherent value in the fact that the home is historic and older. And but I do have to say I oppose it being torn down, because I think we have to look at the bigger picture, how that is part of the fabric of the neighborhood, and that there is a lot of value there in that home. And I hope she can optimize that for her, and everybody will come out of this better. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Smith, you have 57 seconds if you'd like to say final words.
So, thank you for allowing me to get it out. The house has no historical value. It's been painted. I've changed the windows. The historic value was not there when I changed it, and that's what I was not seeking. In 2015, before the overlay became the problem, I asked to knock it down. I just asked that you consider that I started my process before their process.
Thank you. We are now going to close public hearing. So we will have discussion. Commissioners.
I guess I need a little clarification. The application reads as a hardship, but that was not necessarily the case that was provided. I want to make sure. Could we get some clarification on that?
I'll try, but those are other departments, so I can't answer many questions. We first heard from Ms. Smith in 2015, December of 2015, and she asked to rezone the property and for a UDO. Not something that you do. So we sent her to codes and to planning, and what she was told there, I don't know. And then Bill Herbert wrote the letter on 2016 stating that it's a non-conforming use, meaning that there isn't enough square footage on the lot to recognize two different units on that lot. However, she was able to prove that she has had an apartment there for some time. I don't remember how long. And so she has that non-conforming use. And Mr. Herbert, who's the codes director, tells me that if the house were to be demolished, she will lose that opportunity, that ability to have two units. We did receive drawings from Mr. Preston Quirk in 2016. One of them is included in your packet. We gave some feedback, said you're headed in absolutely the right direction for an addition, gave some feedback on some changes to make to ensure approval, but an application was never submitted. Does that help?
It gives a good history. I guess if it's kind of, at least for me, but I definitely wait for the other commissioners to weigh in. I don't know if we should be asking just for them to go back and get more information to be able to better justify the economic hardship, or are we just basically, because right now it's being in the overlay and being in the condition we're looking at, it's hard for us to think anything but it shouldn't be demolished based on that. But so I just guess we need a little bit of guidance if that's the way we should approach it. But the way the application is for a hardship. But if you guys want to say something or clarify on your thoughts, that'd be fine.
I feel unqualified and I guess not duly charged to adjudicate what's come before that has to do with other metro departments. That's something I'm not able to do, and sitting on this while I empathize with sometimes the length of time and the different directions that one has to go in to develop a small or large piece of property. I think we have to consider what's presented before us, which is, you stated, is an application for demolition by economic hardship, notwithstanding all the other information presented today.
I think, any time that an applicant comes in and the staff recommendation is for denial of that application, we take it very seriously, and I personally take that very seriously. The staff report was a 78-page report that had a lot of documentation, a lot of photographs of the existing house, engineering reports, correspondence with codes, a lot of that information. And whereas I can understand the applicant and the others that have spoken so passionately for demolition of this house, I do have to say that this commission has no ability to change existing zoning. It has no ability to change existing laws or regulations. We are a body that only can interpret with respect to our jurisdiction over the historic validity of this house. In looking at the house and looking at the reports, it's stated fairly clearly that this house is a contributing house, which is one that's that's deemed by a lot of different groups to be a house of value and of worth, a value that means something to the neighborhood. In fact, the applicant called it's a generational legacy. I think it's a generational legacy not just for this family, but for the neighborhood itself. And that's been brought out in several of the 9 appeals that we've had from people in writing to not demolish this house from the neighborhood. So it's a difficult situation, but by the same token, in all of this, I don't see a hardship. I do see ways to create another home on this property in accordance with the rules and regulations. There have been several arguments about property rights. Yes, people do have inherent property rights with their property, but that is not unlimited. It is restricted to what the rules and regulations of the city that they live in have come up with and developed over the years, and that protects everybody to live in the kind of neighborhood they want to without unusual things happening that shouldn't. So we've heard a lot from the community, and at this point in time, I don't see any reason to support this application for demolition.
Yes, I agree with the commissioners before me. While it's hard for us to stay objective on things, when there are such wonderful people that this has to do with and people supporting them. A lot of what we heard from the side for demolition, again, was historical things that, this Historic Zoning Commission were not responsible. We're not. That's not our purview. A lot of the things we kept hearing about an alley and different things, and again, that's, while it might be regretful if Miss Sonia felt. Maybe that she felt some way about the process she's been through, but, as a, in my business myself, sometimes it is difficult to navigate, but we have to deal with what's only our purview, which is, this home is a contributing home in the historic and neighborhood conservation overlay. And with that, I can't support the demolition in terms of a hardship.
While I certainly do respect and acknowledge the importance for creating generational wealth, because I'm certainly a product of that and have done so through real estate as well, so I understand the argument for the applicant, and I also understand the health concerns, because we never want to force someone to remain in a space that's going to be unhealthy for them, especially when it comes to the mold and mildew, a lot of which is contributed to that retaining wall that's there. However, I want to know if there have been steps that have been taken by the applicant to mitigate the internal issues within the property, and what has been the result of that. Upon receiving the information here, I certainly did review it, and I don't necessarily support demolition, but I certainly do support doing what's right for people in the community to create wealth opportunities, to create a generational legacy, to have a space that's safe and healthy, because what good is it if we're not able to effectively live and pass along the assets that we acquire over our lifetime to future generations? So with that being said, I don't necessarily support demolition, but I certainly would support opportunities for you to create or improve the second living space that's within the existing property, as well as do what's necessary to make sure that you can have a healthy and safe space to live in.
Thank you. I agree with the comments of previous commissioners that this is a contributing house in an overlay that's been in place since 2013. This is not anything that happened incredibly recently in terms of adopting the conservation zoning overlay, and I can't favor or agree with the applicant for demolition.
Commissioners, there's some pretty good comments here, and also in response to Ms. Smith's presentation. So is there a motion? Is there further discussion? And just so that the applicant as well is listening to our conversation, is that the application is for full demolition for economic hardship. So I think when we look at our purview, that is what we are recommended to review.
Commissioner Bell, with respect to 2300 10th Avenue South, I move for disapproval of the application for full demolition, finding it does not meet Section 3B2C for economic hardship.
There's a motion.
Second.
There is a second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? There are none opposed. So that motion passes. Thank you. And thank you again, applicant. With that said, Ms. Smith, please feel free to talk to the staff again to see if we can do further. Okay. Okay, 1105 Clayton Street. Actually, Avenue.
Just a second. Okay. The house at 1105 Clayton Avenue is a circa 1941 house that contributes to the Belmont-Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning overlay. The application is for a rear addition inclusive of a ridge raise and changes to the previously enclosed screen porch. In terms of depth and height, the proposed addition is modest. This design could almost be approved on the staff level. However, the applicant is requesting a rear addition and ridge raise without the use of the required insets. Here's the front elevation as proposed, using a 2-foot ridge raise. 2-foot ridge raises are permitted on side gabled houses such as this one. However, a 2-foot inset on either side is required when a ridge raise is used. Staff recommends that a 2-foot inset be utilized as per the guidelines to demarcate the original ridge line and to differentiate the original house from the new construction. To date, the Commission has not deviated from this inset requirement with ridge raises. Here's the rear elevation and second floor plan showing no insets. The sidewall should be inset at least 1 foot on the first floor and 2 feet on the second floor. Other than the lack of inset, staff finds the proposal to be appropriate in terms of height, scale, massing, roof form, design, location, removability, and materials. Moving on to the front elevation, this picture from the 1960s shows that the house originally had an open front porch. This porch was enclosed with windows and glass block prior to the creation of the overlay. The applicant proposes to replace the existing glass block with siding, further enclosing the porch. Staff would recommend leaving the front wall of this former porch as transparent as possible to retain the appearance of a porch. Staff has no objection to the existing glass being replaced, but would recommend against installing an opaque material. One possible solution would be to install windows that are approximately 6 feet tall with a trim board beneath. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of the application with the following conditions. 1, the first floor addition will be inset by a minimum of 1 foot, and the second floor, inclusive of the ridge raise, will be inset a minimum of 2 feet. And the front wall of the enclosed porch shall use windows approximately 6 feet tall with a trim board below. Staff shall approve the final foundation material, roofing, color, and windows prior to purchase and installation. And the HVAC shall be located on the rear facade or on the side facade beyond the midpoint of the house. With these conditions, staff finds the application meets the appropriate design guidelines. Questions for me?
I do have one quick one.
Yeah.
Sometimes the drawings or elevations and plans are not, we don't want to have any confusion.
Sure.
The way that the front porch is rendered, one could look at the elevation and assume that the door could be between the columns at the face. Correct. Or set back as it is.
Correct.
And
if that's something you
historically
want
has been. I just want to make sure that we're not getting further porch enclosure.
Yeah, my understanding, and I believe the applicant is here, yes, they can clarify, but my understanding is that door is staying where it is. You're right, it's hard to tell in elevation, but the door, I don't believe the door is moving.
Okay.
But we can clarify that. Any other questions for me?
Thank you, Jenny. Applicant, please.
Do you want to speak? Yeah. Feel free to click through if you want.
All right. Good afternoon. Kyle Kramer. I'm the architect for this project, 116 Majestic Lane, Franklin, Tennessee. To answer the first question, the front door is not going to move. So it's back. And Jenny and I discussed the front porch, at length with regard to the way it was. She furnished this photograph to us actually after we were retained for this project. So my client has asked me to, maintain not the glass block look, but he really wants the privacy where the glass block is. So they were really pushing us hard to keep the bottom skirting or convert the glass block into a half wall with windows above. So we've talked about that at length, but he's asked me to kind of push back on that. As far as the second floor addition as well, we certainly respect the appropriateness of the insets with regard to the historic intent here and giving some differentiation between the main house, the main roof line, and the addition. So we're trying to, push that limit with regard. We know the ridge raise is okay. We know we should be in 2 feet, and we're asking, because of the way the second floor is and the limited square footage, to see if we can at least push out to be flush, considering we're using a different material than the existing brick, or maybe some middle ground to where we're not going in the full 2 feet, but maybe a foot. So that's kind of where we are with the project. But I think, as Jenny mentioned, it was pretty straightforward addition, and we know we're kind of bumping it out there. It is a raised property, and it's pretty tough to see from the street. I mean, if you look at the straight elevation, as you do when you're looking at the 2-dimensional drawings, you can see that ridge raise. But when you're out there, these pictures are pretty accurate, and when you're out there driving and walking on the street, it's really set up on a hill, and it'd be tough to kind of see that ridge at the top as it is with respect to the back of the house as it is now. So, that's all I have.
Mr. Kramer, you said that the owner had really pushed back and asked you to make a big case for putting an opaque wall where the glass block is now. Could you give us a little more about that, other than just that he'd like it that way?
Well, he wants to use it as an office, and he just feels that from the desk height down, he'd rather have some more privacy than going full height with the windows. Obviously we can do some privacy work on the windows. I think that would probably not be in keeping with what we're trying to do. If we want to open this, I wouldn't want to put windows there and then put any kind of solar, shading devices on those windows down low. Obviously, he's not, and neither are we, a fan of the glass block, so that we will be taking that out.
Okay.
The bigger thing, though, if I just can, the bigger thing I think is the rear, is the second floor addition. If you look at the floor plan, we take 2 feet on either side, just the geometry of the house, it just really starts limiting what they can do on the second floor. The first floor is mostly covered porch, so the second floor footprint is not going to be on the first floor. So 2/3 of that second floor footprint is going to be open below. So we're okay on that side. It's just the second floor insets, really.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. We may have something else, but give us a moment. Okay. Going to open public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this project? Close public hearing. Discussion.
From my opinion, as far as the rear goes, it's kind of a cut and dry issue. The guidelines call for the 1 foot insets on the main floor and 2 feet on the second floor. So I just feel like that's a pretty cut and dry argument that needs to be. And, we've never deviated from that before, and we all know what deviating from the guidelines means. I don't know, I guess I'd like to hear from the other commissioners on I'm trying to visualize the front, with the want for a full-length, window, and then what the applicant would like, and the design guidelines, how that plays into effect specifically. So I'd like to hear what everybody else thinks about the front, but for the back, for me, it's pretty cut and dry.
I don't have a lot that should add, only that I just agree. It seems like it's a great application, but I agree with staff recommendations. I don't see why changing at this point?
Any additional comments on the front porch? Is everyone in agreement with that?
I guess one question for Jenny. So what the staff recommendation is for 6-foot-high windows there, and the applicants ask for something different. So if we approve this, then can the applicant work with staff to find something that maintains the original intent? I guess one of the questions I have is the existing condition. I don't know how long it's been like that, but I'm assuming that if they didn't do anything to that they could keep what was there.
Sure, they could leave what's there. I think he's just stated that they don't want to do that. They would remove the glass block one way or the other. We're recommending against what they proposed. Our suggestion was 6-foot-high windows. You could say that we could work with them to find something transparent that worked. It's kind of up to you.
I mean, it sounds like the transparency of the porch is the important part of it all.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe you want to craft a motion for that since it's something specific.
With respect to 1105 Clayton Avenue, I move that we accept this project and grant approval with the conditions as stipulated by the staff, with the further condition that applicant work with the staff to seek a solution that will maintain and be acceptable to the staff to maintain transparency of the front porch.
There's a motion.
Second.
There's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? None. So it passes. Thank you. 2310 Belmont Boulevard.
All right, this is a request to construct a rear addition and detached accessory dwelling unit at 2310 Belmont Boulevard. The plan also includes demolishing an existing rear addition and converting an existing door on the front facade to a window. The house was built circa 1915 and does contribute to the character of the Belmont Hillsborough neighborhood. The application proposes to convert the existing door on the right side of the front of the house, which is shown here with the red arrow, to a window, and infill the area below with brick, similar to the windows on either side of the existing door that's proposed to be infilled. So the width of the opening would not change, and staff finds this to be appropriate as our research indicates that the house was initially single family before it was converted to an apartment. So with this, the second door that we see here is not likely original. The application also proposes to demolish an existing rear addition, shown here with the red arrow. This addition was constructed sometime after 1957, as it did not appear on the 1957 Sanborn map, which is shown on the right. So staff finds removal of the addition to be appropriate since it's non-contributing. The addition is located at the rear of the house and sets in 2 feet from the rear corners, which meets the design guidelines. The addition does not more than double the footprint or depth of the house and meets all setbacks. As proposed, it's a 2-story addition behind a 2-story house and is neither taller nor wider than the historic house. So here are the side elevations. The addition will be clad in hardy plank siding with a hardy shingle accent. The siding will have reveals of 5 inches and 12 inches. Staff finds that the proposed 12-inch reveal could be appropriate in this case since it's an accent material and will be minimally visible from the street. And here is the rear addition, which includes a 2-story screen porch. The application also proposes a dadu, which is located at the rear of the lot and meets all setbacks. The proposed outbuilding is approximately 775 square feet, which exceeds the maximum of 750 square feet for the lot. The footprint on the site plan labels the footprint of the dadu as 745 square feet. However, when staff calculated the footprint by measuring from exterior wall to exterior wall and including the projecting bay window on the rear elevation, staff found that it exceeded that. Second-level projections are included in the footprint since they increase the massing of the proposed structure and create a covered space on the ground level. Although in this case, the bay window is minimal, it could set a precedent for future projecting and cantilevered upper levels, which would undermine the overall massing that the guidelines attempts to address. So staff would recommend that the overall footprint of the DADU be reduced so it doesn't exceed that 750 square feet. The proposed outbuilding is 2 stories with a maximum ridge height of 27 feet from grade. The 27 feet exceeds the maximum of the design guidelines, which is 25 feet. So staff would recommend that the overall height not exceed 25 feet. The eave height is 17 feet, which meets the design guidelines, and materials on the DADU are similar to those proposed for the addition. So in conclusion, staff recommends approval with conditions, including that staff approve the masonry, roof color, trim, door, and rear porch materials of the addition and the proposed partial demolition on the front of the house. 2, that the footprint of the DADU not exceed 750 square feet. 3, that the overall height of the DADU not exceed 25 feet. 4, that staff approve the foundation material, roof color, doors, and garage door materials for the DADU prior to purchase and installation. And then 5, that the HVAC be located on the rear or side facades beyond the midpoint of the house.
Thank you, Melissa. Any questions for her?
I've got a question about the measuring of the square footage on the DADU.
Sure.
If you remove the cantilevered exterior wall on the second floor, is the application correct, or did you generate a different number even from the 745?
Right. Yeah. So when I measured it, and granted I was using a scale, which you do your best to find where those little ticks land.
Sure.
Would put it over 750 square feet, just by about 7 square feet if you remove the projecting bay on the rear. So it would still be a little more than what the applicants labeled it to be. Any other questions?
Okay, maybe we have some more questions after the applicant. Thank you, Melissa.
Hi, my name's Martin Wick. I'm at 912 Bailey Street. First off, the height isn't an issue. I was reading the ordinance instead of the design guidelines and forgot that there's a 2-foot difference. So 25 feet, not a problem. We'll do that. To answer your question, we take the footprint, in CAD and calculate it out. It's 748 square feet without the bay. And the main reason I'm here is I'm a little confused as to why the commission has started to make a determination on footprint based on second floor bays. We've worked on DADUs before that hasn't been the case. We talked to zoning examiners who said they never include that sort of thing in a footprint calculation. We got a comment that it's because it's covering something below it, but if that was the case, wouldn't eave lines and awnings that are not supported by columns also count towards that, which they don't? And if we're trying to control the overall size of the apartment above, there's already a rule in place for 700 square feet maximum for that, which we meet that as well. So I'm confused where this ruling is coming from, and I'm just trying to get this clarified so I can understand why it needs to change.
If I can steal a second of your time, I have a question related to how far does it, it appears
It's just
not
a
much
foot.
visually.
The bay is just a foot.
Okay. So you're not, you get pretty skinny to enjoy that space underneath there if that works.
Exactly.
Okay.
The overhangs are actually deeper than the bay, and we're not proposing, or I guess, I can't remember now. I don't think we're even proposing to extend the overhang the extra foot. I think it's still just a 2-foot. No, I guess it is. Its overhang is still the full, but the overhang is deeper than the bay is anyway.
Anything else?
Thank you.
May have some more questions. Thank you. Open public hearing. Anyone here? Okay, close public hearing. Discussion.
Can I ask staff or maybe Robin about his question? I mean, I guess I kind of have the same, I just don't remember one coming up that specifically called out square footage in a bay. Maybe this just hasn't come since I've been here, so if we could just get a little clarification on that from how y'all go about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure any have come before you. The thought is that, again, the whole purpose of all the different measurements and requirements are to keep the massing of an outbuilding subordinate to a historic structure. And if bays are allowed, what might come in next? The next projecting bay might be 6 feet deep. And now you're completely changing the massing. So without any direction from you on what would be appropriate, we've just always told people it's inappropriate. You may remember that codes ran into some issues recently where they didn't consider projecting bays, and that does change the setback issues. And so we erred on the side of caution and have always advised people not to have projecting pieces.
I'm a little contrarian on that interpretation, because form and mass, I think, in my mind, is pretty evident when you look at a set of drawings and plans and elevation. And I think if a bay on this project extended 6 feet, it'd look like a big wart on the second, just kind of like the second floor would want to topple over and be pretty evident that I think somebody was, I don't know, either just didn't have a good sense of proportion and design, or that they were trying to, maximize beyond what is reasonable. And I think when we review houses, I'm going to equivocate, but not really. When you review a house and there's a projecting bay on it, that's both historically done and certainly is a method to differentiate unbroken facades, which is also something that we don't particularly care for. It happens, but I think the more compliant projects and those that fit the rhythm and openings and spaces, which is something we rely on, is a tool that's used both historically and in present sense to make architecture. And so this is just a little bit of a curious interpretation, a 1 foot overhang to differentiate this. I don't see it contrasting greatly or being a big problem, and I think, having tried to do it myself, fitting something within the 750 square feet is no easy task, and I personally put some merit in the applicants. There are other restrictions that this is just not going to run wild, I would think, and to speak to the staff's concern, something more than 2 feet begins to get beyond what regular dimensional lumber and things that you would see typically in both new houses and historic houses would do. Again, those are just my thoughts on how we measure.
Just because footprint, is it, when we say footprint, I think do we take that literally? When you all, because we're going to hopefully give some further feedback for you all to consider this for other projects. So for clarity for us too, is footprint, and do we include this? Because this will probably set a bit of a precedence for future guidelines. So let's be really clear on how we interpret this. And I get what you're saying, Commissioner Mosley.
As you're measuring, would we exclude the covered porch if the upstairs was more than 700 square feet? That seems we're pulling apart the hairs in some ways. I think I'm looking at this from a bit further back. I know the staff has at every point. People are, applications are pushing all of the boundaries, but I don't find this particularly, not a hill I want to die on, but I don't find it is contrasting greatly or egregiously against what the dadus were set out to do.
Other architects, you have any other comments? Not that anyone else can't comment, but architects.
Actually, I kind of tend to agree with Ben, especially the way he described it.
I can certainly see where you're coming from, Ben and Brian, but I do think that with the approval of this, it would open up a very gray area between the designers that we work with, design professionals, trying to figure out, what are the real rules here? How far can I go? And then on the staff standpoint to then give an interpretation. And I know some of the things we talked about was if it was grossly out of scale or, but those are terms that are so hard to apply and hard to make a ruling on. So I think in some ways what we have now is something that people can design to and feel fairly comfortable that they're in accordance. If we stretch that and say, well, sort of, kind of, then I think it makes it difficult for us and for the staff and for the applicant to be able to design something that they have a reasonable level of comfort that will be approved.
I think I tend to agree on both sides for the discussion because, it's kind of like how the discussions we've had on outbuildings and DADUs, where is it linear? Is it, and we've come on those kind of complexity, critical thinking about that. So, we've sort of hit our line on that. So maybe we need to consider this as well.
I think I know what a footprint is in the second flooring part of the footprint. That's just how I measure, though. I mean, people get in legal disputes about rentable and leasable. How you measure is important, and trust me, that's millions of dollars are decided on those things in high-rise buildings. So it's very important how you measure. I think that one. Feel like I know what it is when I see it, and this doesn't push the boundary of. It pushes the boundary to make a more livable space upstairs, no doubt. I think the west elevation looks better for it, and so I think my desire to measure that precisely does not overcome better DADU architecture.
When also 25 square feet is not much difference, right?
Well, I don't want to. I think getting into how much is too much. To me, this says a bay, and it improves the architecture of the DADU by breaking up that facade. If you were to present a plan that was, a rectangle, and then you go on four sides and do this biaxial symmetry that goes 2 feet out on all sides, I don't know that that's not doing the same thing that this is doing. That's going, that crosses a line. Where's the line? I don't know, but that seems to cross it. I'm not arguing for that. I think 1 foot in this case, not to disagree with the staff on how they measure, but as much to do with how good architecture is made. In this case, I think I would argue for it in that sense, not in the sense of we ought to measure a very specific way.
I agree with Commissioner Mosley on that. I understand Cyril and Monet's, also their thoughts on it. But just as far as footprint goes and the fact that I do think it's architecturally more appealing and fits the look of it, and it isn't an obvious, egregious, square footage grab that we do see. And staff, I'm sure, sees a lot more than we do. But so I do understand staff's, we do want to keep them small, and, everyone just keeps pushing the boundaries bigger and bigger. But, with this one, and it even as an over, quote unquote, by staff's measurements, that's not how I would measure. I agree with Commissioner Mosley with footprint, and I just think that this is more appealing, and it's a very small and obviously an architectural feature for, a little more space, but not just an egregious space grab for upstairs.
For further clarity, if the bay were bigger and extended the entire length, I would not feel okay with that.
Other commissioners?
For my own clarity, is the 750 square foot maximum, that's square footage of both first and second floor, just the footprint? That's right?
The 750 is the footprint, and the living space is 700. Maximum is what could be allowed. And I don't know if this is useful to the discussion, but I think everyone agrees that what we have right now doesn't really work very well for outbuildings. And so we have received that certified local government grant. We hope to start in the fall to come up with a pattern book that would allow for more flexibility. Our greatest concern is, again, the constant push and not knowing how to advise people. If you want to give us specifics, a bay should never be more than X number of feet deep or wide, or that would be helpful. But to simply say this one is appropriate and the next one might not be, leaves us in a position of not providing good advice.
Well, I'll say that I'll be more direct in how what I think would be appropriate and what equals a bay, and not a space grab for a dadu. I think a limitation in a 2-foot overhang could be appropriate. Certainly 1 foot that does not exceed 50% of a facade seems that architecturally could be in keeping with architecture for outbuildings that is not trying to outdo and outstrip the main structure. 2 feet would certainly be a limit, but a 2-foot overhang for 50% of facade probably generally would not be appropriate. But I think certainly 1 foot in this case for no more than, I'm guessing, about 50%, just based on this. And the fact that this roof line is lower than the main roof line of the house, again, that gets into some other details of what makes a bay or what makes for better architecture, in my opinion, that the roof line is stepped down. It's not a complete maxing on all sides. And certainly I would not give deference to doing it on all sides of the building. That likely would not be appropriate. If that's helpful.
Commissioner Mosley, I tend to agree with you probably. I hear a lot of, though we're talking about a lot of opinion here and what's good design and what isn't, and I don't really have anything to add to that. I think, though, given what Robin just said about planning to create better guidelines for this exact situation, I'm tempted to defer to staff expertise and the guidelines as they're written now versus make them up ad hoc in our meetings. So my feeling is that this, even though it's only 1 foot, 25 square foot total, it's beyond what's written in the guidelines right now, and I feel like it's our charge to uphold as they're written.
Would you like to make a motion?
With respect to 2310 Belmont Boulevard, I move that we approve the application with staff conditions as written in the staff report.
There's a motion.
Second.
There's a second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Please raise your hands, that way we'll get it. So all in favor? There's 3 in favor, and those opposed. There are 3 opposed. So thus, the chair makes the motion, the vote, and I do go for the motion. So that is 4-3. Therefore, the motion passes. So thank you for that discussion. I think it's useful. Staff, Robin, you think that's useful? And again, I think Commissioner David has made a good point that, he made a good point. And definitely in the future, we'll hope to get a little bit more clarity on that. Good. Thank you. 505 Buchanan Street.
505 Buchanan Street in Salem Town Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. And this is an application to construct a new house on a vacant lot. That's a non-contributing house that's to the right of the vacant lot, showing you just the context. The vacant lot with a commercial lot to the left and this building to the right. The new house will be 2 stories with a hipped roof, a full-width front porch on the first story, and a partial-width uncovered balcony on the second story. The building will be brick with asphalt shingle roof and a stone veneered foundation. The building will be 31 feet tall with an eave height of 19 feet. It will be 33 feet wide, 70 feet front to back, and that includes a 6-foot deep front porch and a 10-foot deep rear deck. The massing, there's the right side, massing, materials, and overall character of this building are similar to an infill that was proposed on the adjacent lot to the left just in May of this year. The 2 buildings differ slightly in that the roof height of the current proposal on the right there is 2 feet lower. The eaves are 2 feet lower. Other differences are found in the porch columns and the form of the porch roof. Window patterns on the sides have some variation as well, and there are also different rear decks on the 2 buildings. But otherwise, I said massing, materials, character, very similar. Staff recommends approval of the proposed infill. I should say that you approved the building on the left, and for the same reason, staff finds the current proposal to be appropriate. Staff recommends approval of the proposed infill at 505 Buchanan Street with the conditions that the front setback is consistent with the setbacks of adjacent historic buildings, that the finished floor height is consistent with the finished floor height of historic buildings, that the window opening shall be added on the right side on the upper story, that brick and stone samples shall be approved by staff, window selections approved by staff, roof color to be approved by staff, material of the front walkway and a rear driveway are approved, and finally that utility connections and HVAC are behind the midpoint of the structure or on the rear. Meeting all those conditions, staff finds that this proposal will meet the guidelines for the Salem Town Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay.
Sean, was there any comment on our previous approval of the foundation material? It appears to be a stone, and I don't know if simulated stone have we approved simulated stone on a foundation?
We have, we would want to see a sample to see the sort of the, if it meets a authenticity in appearance of the actual stone and the application technique. Not, you would never see a dry, well, you wouldn't say never, but you very rarely see a dry stack stone foundation, so it should have mortar joints, which is what's typical of historic stone foundations.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Okay, so far. I have more questions, but we'll wait.
The applicant is not here.
Is not here?
He said that he was all right with the conditions.
Very good. Okay. Any discussion or a motion? Oh, sorry about that. Long day again. We're going to open public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this project? We are closed public hearing and discussion or a motion.
Madam Chairman, with respect to 505 Buchanan Avenue, I move for approval with staff conditions.
Motion?
Second.
Second. All of those in favor? Okay, no opposition, so it passes. Thank you. 1902 Bernard Avenue.
Okay. 1902 Bernard is currently a 1973 brick ranch that does not contribute to the historic character of the neighborhood. Staff has issued a demo permit administratively for the house. The house is oriented currently towards Bernard Avenue, which is the side street. So staff recommends and the applicant has agreed to orient the new development towards 19th Avenue South, which will meet the historic context much better. So here's the site plan. Again, it's for single-family infill development, and the house will be oriented to 19th Avenue South. The new infill does meet all base zoning setbacks, which is 10 feet from the Bernard Avenue property line, 5 feet from the interior property line, and the front setback is drawn to line up with the front setback of the historic house next door, which staff finds to be appropriate. Although with all infill houses, we will want to approve the front setback staking in the field just to ensure that it is lining up correctly. The proposed infill is 1.5 stories at the front with a height of 27 feet 5 inches. Staff finds this to meet the historic context, where historic houses in the immediate vicinity are predominantly 1 and 1.5 stories with heights between 22 feet and 30 feet. So this is within that range. Here are the two side facades, the materials. Staff found the materials, the roof form, the foundation height, pretty much everything about the infill meets the design guidelines. Here are some context photos of houses. The top photo is a house next door, houses along that block, and then there's a 4-story, kind of unusual 4-story apartment building, which is historic, across Bernard Avenue from the site. And here are more photographs of the houses in the immediate vicinity. The house on the bottom is a duplex infill that the commission approved, I think, sometime in 2017, and it's just been finished. So in conclusion, staff is recommending approval with the following conditions: that staff inspect the finished floor height, staff approve the front setback during staking, a walkway be included from 19th Avenue South to the front porch, staff approve a brick sample, all windows and doors, and the shingle selection, and finally, that staff approve the HVAC location. So with these conditions, staff finds the proposed infill meets Section 2B of the Belmont Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. And the applicant is here. A few questions.
Good. Any questions for Melissa? All right. Applicant?
Hello, Tyler Lamerno with Allard Ward Architects at 1618 16th Avenue South. I forgot to draw the sidewalk, and we accept all the other conditions, so thank you.
Thank you. All right, public hearing. Anyone here to speak on this project? There is none. We are closed public hearing, discussion, or a motion. Motion? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? It passes. Thank you so much. 403 Scott Avenue.
403 Scott Avenue is currently a vacant lot. In November of 2017, this lot was created by subdividing off a portion of the rear of the lot at 1929 Greenfield Avenue, which is located at the corner of Scott. So in the map below, the larger dotted area was what the lot used to be, and you can see the pink area that's highlighted has been subdivided off and is what we're looking at today. Here is the site plan. The application is for a duplex infill. The proposed infill meets all base zoning setbacks. The house is shifted towards the left or south side of the lot in order to get a driveway on the right side. This lot does not have alley access, so a driveway and curb cut are appropriate, and it's a good way to move the parking to the rear of the house. Just before we go back, the front setback is shown as 20 feet to the front porch, or 27 feet to the front wall of the house. Again, staff finds this front setback to be appropriate, but will want to inspect the staking to ensure its compatibility during construction. Here is the front facade. The proposed infill is 1.5 stories with a height of approximately 27 feet 6 inches from the foundation line. There is a little bit of a cross slope, so the height of the house varies, so we kind of looked at the finished floor height to measure it. Staff finds the proposed height to meet the historic context, where historic houses range in height from 22 feet to 31 feet. Both of the entries are facing Scott Avenue, which is appropriate since this is a duplex. Here are the side facades. All of the known materials meet the design guidelines, as do the roof forms, fenestration pattern, and the orientation. What I forgot to mention earlier when looking at the map back here is that this lot is actually the last lot in the Eastwood Conservation Zoning Overlay. So I'm not sure how well you can see on your screen, but the area that's shaded green is part of the conservation overlay. So all of the houses that face Scott are actually not in the overlay. This is the only house that faces Scott on this block of Scott that's in the overlay. So the context photos that I'll show, the top photo is the house that faces Greenwood, where this property was subdivided off of that lot. That's in the overlay, but the other houses that you see are not in the overlay. And here's our further houses on Scott Avenue. So, in conclusion, staff is recommending approval with the following conditions. One, that the finished floor height be consistent with the finished floor heights of the adjacent houses to be verified by staff in the field, that staff confirm the front setback during staking, staff approve all materials, final material choices, and staff approve the location of the HVAC. With these conditions, staff finds the proposed infill meets Section 2B1 of the design guidelines. And the applicant is here if you have questions for her.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa. Will the applicant please have any comments?
Yes, I'm Lynn Taylor, the designer. I live at 1906 B Shelby, and I'm okay with all the requirements.
Thank you. Open public hearing. Anyone to speak on this project? Close public hearing, discussion, or motion?
Madam Chairman, I move for approval of 403 Scott Avenue with conditions contained in the staff report.
Good. There's a motion?
Second.
There's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposition. That passes. Thank you. Our last one is 1620 Russell Street.
Okay, we had 1620 Russell on consent, but we have moved it to full hearing. The house at 1620 Russell was constructed around 1920 and contributes to the Lockland Springs East End Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. This application is for a rear addition. The proposed addition is shorter and narrower than the historic house. It has a minimal connection, which disturbs as little historic fabric as possible. Staff finds the addition meets the guidelines in terms of height, scale, massing, location, removability, and design. Staff members have worked with the applicant throughout the design process, and overall, we find the proposed design to be appropriate. The one issue where we were unable to reach an agreement with the applicant is in regards to the siding. Prior to purchase by the current owner, the siding on the house was replaced. In a conservation overlay such as this one, Metro Historic does not review the replacement of siding, windows, roofing, etc. The then owner installed a cement fiberboard lap siding with a simulated wood grain texture. So the work was completed legally, but it's not something that we would approve. I can see the confusion. So take a look here. You can see the siding up close. The applicant would like to match this textured siding on the proposed addition. The design guidelines clearly call for smooth finish siding. The commission has never approved textured siding in staff's collective memory, and we have in fact required its removal and replacement when it was installed illegally. In order to comply with the guidelines and to respect precedent, staff recommends that smooth siding be required on the addition. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of the application with the following conditions. The siding shall be smooth in texture. Staff shall approve the roofing color, deck materials, windows and doors prior to purchase and installation, and the HVAC shall be located behind the house or on either side beyond the midpoint. With these conditions, staff finds the application meets the design guidelines. I have talked with the applicants and they're good with the other conditions. It's just the siding that's our sticking point. Do you have questions?
We probably will.
Did you say that the siding that's on the main part of the house was installed before the zoning overlay?
No.
When was it?
It was, we're not sure exactly when, but before the current owner bought the property, so 3 years ago, 5 years ago. No, it was done legally. We do not review siding replacement in a conservation overlay, so they did
Unless it's part of an addition.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. So if you're just replacing your siding, also if you're just replacing your windows, we don't review that. So this was done legally. They have the textured siding on the existing historic home. They would like to match on the addition. The guidelines say on an addition, you have to have smooth siding. So that's our issue. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think the applicant would like to speak as well.
Of course. Applicant, please come forward.
Hi, my name is Yancey Lovelace. I am the part of the design build firm for the owner here, Sean Marshall. So in staff's comments, they have, staff recommends that the commission require smooth siding as a textured siding could be replaced at some time with a material more appropriate for the district. So we're basically in a situation where homeowner bought the house post this siding renovation and would like to do an addition, but obviously the guidelines require smooth. So fiber cement siding can last as long as 50 years if maintained and painted. So the existing siding is only about 6 years old, and there's no reason for the homeowner to replace the existing textured siding anytime soon. So for design continuity for the project at 1620, we think that the smooth siding will compromise the overall look of the addition and project. We also feel that the different materials could be read as out of place and careless per the builder/designer. We'd like y'all's consideration in this change. We feel everything else is well within the guidelines, and just we're kind of stuck with an unfortunate scenario where the previous homeowner wasn't required to follow the historic guidelines. And if Sean has anything else to say, I'd like to let him speak as well.
I have a question.
Shoot.
So in terms of getting a similar product, you can get the same color?
It's a painted.
Oh, it's painted.
It's a
You would
painted
paint it.
product, yes, ma'am.
So of
So we'll
course you
color
can get that.
match. Yes, ma'am.
And a smooth texture would drastically be different than this?
In an appearance, when you are on the side deck, or if you are, standing right next to the addition meets the existing, yes, I feel, in my opinion, it would drastically stand out, and like I said before, look like we made a mistake and didn't install the correct material to match the existing home.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question as well. In this photograph, and it could just be in the nature of the photograph, I'm not sure what product was used, but most hardy siding has a corner board that has a thickness and is solid. This appears to be sort of the old aluminum siding kind of wrap the corner. I'm just...
That is I don't know the exact texture. I mean, I'm sorry, not texture, but material. Is it a Fipon? Is it a Mirtec? I don't know the exact material there.
Am I seeing it right? Does the siding actually stop at the corner board, or does it pass behind it?
It's a corner board.
Okay, it's a proper corner board. It just doesn't, in the picture, it certainly is fooling my eye.
It may be the gutter that's throwing you when it's seen up here. It's hard to.
I guess my point being, if it's the thing that kind of goes around it, don't do that.
Yes.
All right. That's not proper. Anyways, thank you.
Okay, well, good.
Any other questions for me?
No, not for a moment.
Yes.
Applicant.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Sean Marshall, 1620 Russell Street. I know I'm last on the agenda, so I appreciate your time. My wife and I bought the house about 5 years ago. We love it. It's been very important to us to maintain the historic nature of our neighborhood. House next to us, Johnny Cash used to ride in it, and it actually has wood grain on the house right next door to us. Again, Yancey highlighted all the issues pretty specifically, but the main goal is it's a beautiful home. We get lots of wonderful comments on it, and we just wanted to maintain the character and conformity of it going forward. So I just wanted to show that it was our intentions to maintain the look and the feel of the home.
Okay, thank you. Open public hearing? None. Closed public hearing. Discussion?
We are charged by the Department of the Interior to carry out what's called for in their guidelines and specifications, and the smooth surface is one of those. However, we are also allowed to, from time to time, make judgment calls based on particular and unique circumstances that aren't likely to appear in the general context in the future. Whereas I would never be one to propose using the false-grained imprinted graining on the wood. I think this is a particularly unique situation in that the existing house was resurfaced legally, and the new plans and designs conform with what we like to see and what the requirements and guidelines call for. And I think in this case, it's really warranted to go ahead and match the existing material.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I mean, it's, I don't like to go, yeah, it is hard to say, because I think I've asked, got people to take it off so many times before, but, and I'm trying to even think about it. It's almost like if it's in the conservation overlay and we don't approve it when you change it, but yet we approve it when you do an addition, Yeah, so what I think is it won't set a precedent because what it is I think so. You know, it's just like this particular case is something specific where they it was done legally, and if we did it differently, it will be, I mean, even worse, I think. So kind of back to the architectural look of it all. So unless we could get it all changed to smooth, I think I feel also we would be making it worse.
I have to say I disagree.
Ben is just contrarian today.
I don't disagree with the applicant's desire, and to do it, it really is more that on this issue in particular, we've gone to the mattresses on this one with applicants before having them remove it. Certainly not suggesting that in this case, but I think bringing something or approving something that is moving away from compliance as opposed to towards it doesn't. That's what I have trouble with, and I respect the argument here and that's been made for matching what's there, but I find it peculiar that we don't review a siding replacement or a window replacement. It almost incentivizes somebody to do the wrong thing and fix their house up and then come in for an application for addition and put aluminum windows in to match the existing windows. To me, that equivalency argument could be made. I don't know that we would grant that equivalency argument, but I think if that were done and we didn't review that in a conservation overlay, I wouldn't. I'd have a harder time holding one applicant to it when I didn't hold all applicants to it. So on this one, that's where I'm leaning on this one. As much as I don't want to do that to an applicant, I would. It's the ones that come after them that I worry about as much. Which is completely different from my argument on the other dadu, but that's this one is it has more to do with the consistent application of the guidelines for me than it does with meeting the owner's desire. Although I do respect that there are situations that we would vary from those, and certainly this approaches that. But in my mind, it doesn't push me over that hill.
I definitely recognize the applicant's desire to match siding on their addition, but I tend to agree with Commissioner Mosley. And if you step back and look at it, a lot of historic homes with their original siding may have drop siding or beaded siding that doesn't match with the smooth hardy board that we approve routinely. So it's not unusual to have different kinds of siding for an addition versus the original portion of the house. While I understand how architects and designers might not like that, it's pretty routine in a historic district to have different kinds of siding. I also, just as a hypothetical thought experiment, you could build it doesn't make sense to me that we have guidelines that you could build an addition with smooth siding, and then after you build it, rip it all off and put non-conforming siding on it. So that may be something that we need to revisit.
I might be able to help with that a little bit. That is the difference between the two different types of districts you have. And the reason being is to offer a tool that's less restrictive than the more traditional tool that most cities have. So you have your historic preservation overlays, which are Edgefield and Woodland and Waverly, Germantown, just to name a few. And then you have the neighborhood conservation zoning overlays. In historic preservation, you review all exterior alterations, which again is meeting the type of districts most cities have. Neighborhood conservation, you're only reviewing new construction and demolition and moving a building. So that's where that difference comes in. The addition is new construction, so you are reviewing the materials for new construction. But if someone wants to replace siding, windows, doors, roofing, siding, then you don't review it. That makes sense.
And then I guess this is kind of a lot of times we get additions to historic, well, every meeting we get addition applications. And, the ones that I'm distinctly remembering were commercial buildings in different districts. But, I guess I'm seeing this Revit model on the application. I don't know if you showed the photo on the thing, but I don't know if, just like the two blue buildings, a lot of times we talk about making them different, the additions different from the historic home. So that is, kind of to Commissioner's point over here, it's, I don't know, just in different projects, we've talked a lot about that, like not exactly trying to it's not the same home, it's the addition to the home to make it different from the home. And I'm not saying whether that's, the addition has, the smooth blue, purple, I don't know, siding where the current house, has the legally installed, but not awesome grain, blue, purple siding. Was that a thought for staff, the differentiation? Or, I mean, we talked about that in previous ones, and it just kind of hasn't come up in this one. It's more like, how do we match it, when a lot of times we talk about not wanting to match it, so.
Sure, and that kind of goes back to the Secretary of the Interior standards, where they want additions to be compatible yet differentiated. We typically require the smooth siding because that's what you would see historically. It hasn't typically been, a difference in siding texture hasn't really been something we've used to differentiate. We have had a couple times where you've seen some variations in siding, but not texture. I mean, as per Commissioner Price's point, it would, if we go ahead and require the smooth where we have texture on, it will differentiate the two. Maybe not in the way we would traditionally see it, but.
And just to add to that, the Secretary's standards are intended to differentiate between historic materials and new materials. This is a new material.
And also looking at the plan too, the addition is separated from the original house. So again, just thoughts is that differentiation is not side by side per se.
I'll add, for me, part of the analysis comes into just the simulation of any material, hardy and other siding materials that are durable and sort of prove their value and worth in modern construction. I think those are part of the tools that we use. I've been asked before on another case, really has little to do with this, but it was a removal and reapplication of smooth siding. What's the big deal? Why is it? And part of me, goes to the simulation of a stone look that is amateurish, and it's you could just look at it and it's lick and stick sort of stone, and it's not, it's brown. We don't have brown stuff. It just isn't a stone that would be used in construction in this environment, and so it doesn't fit. And I think, in my analysis, the simulated wood grain on siding is not a historic building material and not something in that respect that would be encouraged. So in my mind, I don't want to muddy the waters of the argument. That has everything to do with it, to me, the simulation of the wood grain, and again, moving something towards less compliance as opposed to more.
I do think that the simulation of the wood grain is something that the Department of the Interior does not prefer, and that, among preservationists, it's not something that we prefer. However, in reality, the hardy plank is used to simulate smooth sawn planed wood. And so it's really trying to do that same thing. I think, were this a different material for the back, were this a commercial structure where they go in for tax credits, it would have a different skin on the outside of this building than what this has. And so that anyone could say, oh yeah, that was the addition, this was the original. And I think here, the addition has been well proportioned and scaled and planned for this project, but without that type of differentiation. To me, the difficulty is that if you have the simulated grained wood on one and the flat on the other, it's like you said, gosh, they missed that, they ordered the wrong stuff and they didn't send it back. And so to me, it just does not.
It's not different enough.
It's not different enough. So that's part of my reason for supporting the applicant on this one.
Anyone else? LaDonna is good? All right. Well,
I was just going to say that I agree that the material should match, because I'm with you. It's too aesthetically similar so that it looks like they ordered the wrong material. And I was just curious as well, in terms of aging of the product, how different will it look if one has a wood grain, one is smooth? Over time, what does the exterior paint look like? So how different would that end up looking just a few years down the line as well?
Given that we may have a split vote on this one, I think I'll go ahead and throw out a motion to see if we can go anywhere. So with respect to 1620 Russell Street, I move that we accept this application, approve it with staff recommendations and conditions, with the exception of number one, that the siding should be smooth in texture, to allow the applicant to duplicate the siding that is on the current house.
there's a motion.
And I think it's, to make this complete, I think I would want to put with that motion that I feel this is a unique circumstance that is only being approved because of the uniqueness of this house, the recent legal application of the textured siding, and do not see it as precedent setting.
I second.
Okay, Commissioner, second. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Okay, how about we raise hands? All in favor? Okay. All opposed? There are two, so the motion passes. Okay. Thank you for the discussion. It's a very good one. Robin, that's helpful, correct, on discussion. Very good. All right, anything else? The next meeting is September 19, and here as well. So, is that right? No? Oh, Howard. Howard Conference. What? That's here. So didn't I say the next meeting?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it'll be here, so.
Oh, we're not sure.
We will let you know when it is posted.
Okay, very good.
It's actually the Sonny West room in the
Howard Conference Center. All right, good. We are adjourning our meeting.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.